Hello, Nachelle. How are you? Thank you so much for joining. I'm so glad you're here. I just want to say that you are the first person that I'm doing the podcast. You're the first. So, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I feel super honored, not just to be part of your podcast, but you're part of my church fam, and it's grown to more than that. And so I'm just happy that I'm here and I get to help you on your vision. That's it.
Yeah. And when I first started, first of all, this podcast is so overdue. You've heard me talk about this for so long. And this year was the year I'm doing a lot of internal healing. And this
Mhm.
year was like, this is my year of dreams and visions. And this is one of the dreams I had for so long. So when I thought about, all right, who am I going to invite first? Who am I going to record? I was just like, Nachelle, because we did life together. We did church life together. We
I'm
met
getting
at
teary eyed.
church.
It's really dusty in this room.
And I have seen you grow personally and your career. And I remember being in the same room as you praying for what you are living today. So when I invited you, and you didn't even hesitate, you were just like, yes, tell me time and place.
Tell me
So
where
I'm
I need
so
to be.
grateful.
I just want to say that without you knowing this, I just want you to know that the spirit is one. And the reason I'm getting teary eyed is that even though I know you're speaking from the heart, one of the things this year that I said my word for this year is execution. I don't
Hmm.
want to talk about it anymore. I don't want to be like, God, I'm praying for things. It's straight up execution. And the fact that you're saying I've been healing and I've been doing the things that I've had vision for, that I've been wanting to do, like we're actually here, fast forward, and not just career wise, but just life in general. All I heard while you're saying that, and I started getting teary, and I'm like, oh my God, really? Really? 3 minutes in? Um, is is really like execution. Like, this is what I've sent you out to do. Like, it's time to execute. We don't need to talk about it anymore. We just need the action. And here we are.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, because I've
Hmm.
been saying that for so long. And what's been holding me back is just so silly because I start overthinking. And then I'm like, there's so many podcasts out there with similar topics. Like, who's going to listen? Who's going to want to listen to my voice? What if I mess up? It's just all these loud voices in my head until I was just like, you know what? I'm going to silence them and I'm just going to go for it.
That's right.
And
That's
here
right.
we are. So thank you so much for joining. I just want to take it back to the beginning. Baby Nachelle, I want to hear your entire journey, your career. Let's just dive right in because we have so
Let's
much to
just,
talk about.
we do. We do have so much to talk about. Baby Nachelle. So, I was born and raised in Naples, Florida. My family came from Haiti. I think my mom, she told me she came from Haiti in 1980. And then my dad, I think, came like 79, 81 between the, I don't recall. Anyways, they came in the 80s.
Yeah.
And then they were living in different parts of Florida. And then they had me in 1986 in Naples, Florida. And growing up with two immigrant parents and being the first generation Haitian America, Haïtien, ça passe na boule. Uh, but don't worry though, because Cynthia is my cousin, my prima, because of the island of Hispaniola. So here we are.
Yes.
Right. So they, I was born there. I was actually born in the same hospital that I ended up coming back to work as a physician, which is God again.
Oh, wow. I didn't
Uh,
know that.
oh
That's
yeah. So
wild.
it's only a story that I'm just like, okay, God, that was you. That was fly. There's no way I could have wrote
Yeah.
that. There's no way I could have wrote that. So
Wow.
yeah, born and raised there, Haitian family, minimum pay, minimum wage, doing the best they can. Back
Yeah.
then, middle class was better to attain than what it is now. And so that happened. Went to Naples High School, graduated, went to University of South Florida. Graduated as the first cousin, like out of the cousins that were born stateside, that graduated from college. And then I had this crazy notion to be like, God, I want to go to med school. Now, mind you, I've always wanted to be a doctor when I was younger.
Really?
I'm serious. I'd go into the doctor's office and he'd be like, can you sit on the chair? You know, when they come in and they have that little rolly chair so they
Yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
slide into the room.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's my seat. You need to get up. Okay. And then the other thing is the hospital that I was born in, my mom worked as a certified nursing assistant or CNA or a nurse tech that they call them now for
Mm.
20 plus years. She initially started as a cleaning lady, then she became or CNA.
Wow,
So
look at
then,
her.
girl, I was just like, God, you are fun teeth. Anyways,
Yeah.
grew up, went to college, did all these things. And then after college, I was like, okay, God, like I really want to become a doctor. And my mom's like, well, why don't you just try like doing something that's a bit more easier, like simple, like you could be a nurse or whatever. And I was like, I know who I am. And I'm not saying that all nurses take like instructions like that. Like there are really great
Right.
nurses that I've been fortunate to work with. But for me, I was just like, I just know if I'm taking care of a patient, it's hard for me to be like, I'm just gonna sit and take instructions, especially if I know I'm doing right by someone. So then I was like, nah, let me just stick with the dream and become a doctor. So then I got accepted into med school in the Caribbean. After that, did about 4 to 5 years, and then that is what brought me to New York because I had to do my medical rotations. And when I first moved to New York, which I love now, and I live here now, but baby, when I first moved there, I was like, it. Mind you, I'm coming from Naples, Florida. It's very homogenous. So I lived a very sheltered, uh,
Yeah.
privileged life as far as being able to be a kid. So I get up here and I'm like, oh my God, they don't even say good morning.
Yeah.
People are disgusting. Why are they so mean? What do you mean I can't just leave my purse on the counter? I'll be right back. And they're like, that is gonna get taken. Like stuff
Yes.
like that. I
Yeah.
had I had no street cred. None.
Oh my God. I had the opposite because I born and raised in New York and
Okay.
then finished college, landed my first job at Ernst and Young in Connecticut.
Nice.
So then for me, it was the opposite. I
It
went
was a
from New
reverse.
York to Connecticut and I was like,
Oh, you
why
were
are
so
they saying
bored.
good morning to me? Like, what? like, like I was ready to throw some. I was like, why are they? And
You
at the
know me?
time, yeah, I was just like, wait, what's going on? At the time, Johnny and I were dating. And he was like, relax, like, let your guard down, put your shoulders down. Like, this is Connecticut. So I had the opposite experience from you. It's crazy. It's
You're
just
like,
a
what?
cultural shock.
Relax.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it was. Definitely a cultural shock for me. And then you know, I ended up moving into Park Slope, Brooklyn. Thank you to my titi Milagros, rest in peace. So she gave me an apartment to rent in Park Slope. And so I was just like, you know what? I visited other parts. I have the funniest story of how I initially tried to get an apartment in East New York. Didn't work out for
No.
me. I was just like, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't. So then I ended up getting a spot in Park Slope. It was so, God is so funny. And I was like, I'm never living in New York City. Never. So then what ended up happening, that's moving into New York City. That's how I got into Hillsong. And then that's how I met you
Yes.
through church. So I was just like, okay. And the one thing I will always say about coming to church up here is that I knew about religion back home, but coming to church here is when I actually knew relationship with God.
Hmm.
Like that was the one thing that I'm like, if it had to be one thing I could summarize up here, one thing about knowing real, genuine people, it's not the ones that say good morning. We all know that now.
Mhm.
But also, it's the one thing that I recognize is that I really learned to have a really, like, an actual relationship with God. So, fast forward, I get done with my rotations, I graduate, and then I go to move to Connecticut. And I did a couple of years research there, about a year and a half, almost two. And then afterwards, I moved back to Naples for residency because I finally got into residency. And then fast forward, I finished 3 years of internal medicine residency program. I did one more year of chief resident. So I helped manage, did all the administrative stuff. And then afterwards, I ended up I came back to New York City. That was my ticket to come back Because when I moved to Naples, Florida, back after I've been through all of this, I was like, I can't stay. Not gonna happen. I miss the rudeness. I miss I miss the people in the streets. I miss the diversity, truth be told.
Right,
And
yeah.
all my church people, like people who would pray for me, and like we were all different paths. And I missed that. So then I came back, and then since then they were like, "So when are you coming back to Naples?" It's not gonna happen, Pot.
No, really? Oh man, we actually
I
want to
love it up
move
here.
to Florida.
Who?
It's just been a thought. Like, our older kids are all going to be in high school this coming
Okay.
September. So we're like, all right, we have 4 years of them finishing high school, go to college. And then it's like, and then what do we do with this big house? Do we sell it? Do we move? So Florida has been, thrown in the air here and there. So
I'm
it's
not
just
gonna hate on
funny
you.
how you're like, I'm not going back.
Well, I think if I do go back, it would be because I'm in that stage of like after I'm done raising these kids and I want to slow it down. But I think I'd still
Right.
find a way to still have property up here. So I'd be one of the snowbirds because as much as I genuinely love being in Naples, Florida, there's certain interactions that you have and you're like, yep, it's time to head on back. It's time to head on back. So yeah,
Yeah, and that's funny that you say when you came here to church, that's when you really found a relationship with God.
hmm
So for me, it was very similar. I don't know. So I was raised Catholic. I don't know if you were raised
no,
Catholic, but it was
Baptist.
more like Catholic on Easter, on special occasions. We were Catholic and we would go to church for Easter and the whole 9 yard. And then after that, it was just like, that's it. I didn't know who God was. I didn't have a relationship until I met Johnny. And then he took me to Hillsong, New York. And that was my first encounter with God. And then from there was probably the only time I had a relationship, like you said, with God.
Yeah.
But prior to that, it was just like, I'm Catholic because that was just what my parents said, and that's how
Mhm.
we grew up. And then that's it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, I still went to church. I did all the things. I would do my Bible studies, but it was just like it's something. I feel like it was more so a religious type of dogma. This is something that
Yeah.
we believe in, and this is what you're supposed to do. And if I find you doing anything else, it's a wrap. So my thing was just like that's what I knew growing up in a Haitian Baptist church, and then I went non-denominational. But then, yeah, when I finally, just like you, I'm same sentiments. Where I was just like, what's going on here? What is this? What is this summoning in my spirit and my soul? This stirring. So
Yeah, same.
I feel
Especially
you. Yeah.
Hillsong because it was so different.
hmm
Like for me before, when I would think about church, I don't know, I would think, like how the Catholic Church, like the buildings. So when I first went there, the person who was preaching was actually Carl. And I remember when he came out, most of the pastors there had like the ripped jeans, the leather jacket. And I was just like, wait a minute, this is not like what I'm used to. So it was such a different dynamic when I went into Hillsong.
You're so cute. I felt the same. I was like, what's going on here? Is this a nightclub? Why is it so dark? Like what? What is going on? Why is he yelling at me? You can't just say what you need to say without barking at me. And then I was like,
Mhm.
oh no, oh. And I was just like, this is actually makes sense. This makes me want to come back. Um, so yeah, I totally agree with you. It's a shell shock because it doesn't feel like it was performative. It was actually like it felt genuine as
Right.
far as our heeding to the voice of God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about when we would do our connect groups. Because that I hold such a fond memory in my heart of when we would all gather in my house. So I think Johnny and I were the first ones to have the connect group in Connecticut. Because the,
Yes.
the plan was to open up a campus in Connecticut. So one of the pastors came up to us and asked us if we can, open up a connect group just so we can get started on the campus in Connecticut, and we did, and you were one of them. So let's go back there, because those are probably one of the best memories, because I remember praying for specific things and looking now and I'm like, this is wild how we're living in these prayers now.
Correct. So when I ended up going to do research at Yale for like 2 years, like I said before. So when I first moved out there, I was like, man, my church family here. And then I think it was at that time that you and Johnny got that first home. And then you were like, oh, we're opening a connect group. And I was like, what? And then when I looked like at my phone, I was like, it's only 35 minutes away, like 30, 40 minutes away from where I stayed in Connecticut. And I was just like, oh no, I'm definitely coming there. And it was, I just felt like when life was going crazy, the one thing I knew I had looked forward to was coming to Connect Group and just being able
Yeah.
to pray and not feel alone and not feel crazy. And I loved that we were able to be just super transparent and vulnerable. Transparent is
Mhm.
one thing, but being vulnerable, like, yo, this is where I'm
Yeah.
at. This is what it looks like. This is what I'm asking God for. You know, certain things that you were praying for Johnny, and then even for myself. And then Bella, when she came to the Connect group
Yeah.
and she started praying that one time. Oh
Yeah,
my
we
God.
can't forget about Bella.
Oh my gosh. Everybody held their hands. All I know, Bella's my dog. She's my med school baby. All I know is that we all held hands, and Bella just started looking around, and she was like, "Art, Jesus," and I was, and I'll never forget that. But yeah, I that holds such a sweet space in my heart and in my soul because like you guys were totally there for me, and vice versa, and having that one time in the week where I was like, okay, life is crazy, but I know I'm not by myself and I get to see my peoples. And it was always
Yeah,
a good time. All
I know.
always a good time.
Yeah, I loved it. And I just
Yeah.
remember like you praying for your exam and Johnny. And I remember it's funny because I still follow you guys all on social media. And I remember Tori was just praying for a healthy relationship and in the long run for marriage, as we all do. And I saw the other day she got married. And I was just like, look at God.
And she's having a baby.
I know,
I was
yes.
like,
Yes.
when I saw that, I just, you know, when you chuckle and the
Yeah,
chuckle might
yeah.
turn into a tear or five or 15. Cause I'm like, God, how faithful is God? Like,
Yeah.
there's many times, like, you know, me with my exams, Johnny with his thing. And it's like, God, are you even listening? And I remember we hadn't spoken in probably a couple of months. And then I called you the other day and I was like, girl, can we talk about how like crazy it is? Like we're actually doing the things that we said. You were praying for a bigger home,
Oh,
and
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
and the
That
other
was a
home you wanted, it didn't
while.
go through, and we just don't know. And the kids are getting big, and you know what I mean. And then now, fast forward, like your beautiful home. When you told me like, yo, this is what happened, I'm like, okay, like go off, God, go off. So.
Yeah, those were crazy times. I remember the apartment we were living in flooded, and we came home from church one
Mhm.
night, and there was a whole bunch of ambulance, firefighters, police people outside, and I was just parking my car like, oh geez, I wonder what's going on over there.
Who
And
is
as
it?
I yeah, yeah, and as I start approaching my apartment, they're like, oh, do you live here? I even forgot the apartment number, and I was like, yeah, why, what's going on? And they're like, oh, your entire apartment is flooded. And that, oh gosh, that was so harsh because the money we were saving for our down payment, we had to just use it
Allocated towards
on,
that.
yeah, allocated to finding a new apartment right away. It was just crazy. It was just wild. And then here we are living in the home that we so prayed for. That just always blow my
And
mind.
and that even that situation, I remember there was another home that you really liked, but they were trying to give you the runaround. And then you're
Yeah.
like, we came to this one. I don't, girl, I'm an elephant. I don't forget these prayers
Yeah.
and these
Yeah.
stories. And then you were like, they just give me the runaround. I don't know. I'm so stressed. And I was like, girl, God, I think God flooded you to get you out this apartment and understand like the home is coming. Even
Yeah.
though it didn't look like that, you just like, what's going on? What's going on? So for you to have that beautiful home too, it's beautiful. I love how God has just brought us forward because now I'm just like, when I'm at the hospital or they're paging my name overhead and I'm like, like God, like,
Yeah, like
wow.
that's me.
Right, right. I need to call him. I'm going to call him. But at the same token, it's just kind of like a shell shock because, your prayers, our parents' prayers, and all these things that we've asked God for, and He's been so faithful with. So, so faithful with.
I know it's wild. So I think you also wanted to talk about imposter syndrome.
Ooh,
So let's dive into that.
dive in. Um, so imposter syndrome, I guess, I don't guess. I know one of the reasons I want to talk about it is because I genuinely feel that the way that you were talking about the negative conversations that you have in your head and like overthinking, I genuinely feel apart from people trying to place those pressures on us. The other thing happens is like you really question what God put in you. Like,
Hmm.
what? What are we talking about? Why am I second guessing myself? Why am I trying to compare myself with someone else when I am who I am, when I have the skills that I have? And most importantly, I have a God who already went before me. Like Deuteronomy 31:8. Like I've already gone before you. I've blessed your path.
Right,
And
yeah.
for me, my thing is just like imposter syndrome. If I could find it and just, you know what I mean? Like,
Headlock.
oh, oh, like, just because I realize that we question so much and we have these internal dialogues like if we can even do it, and half the time God's like, I don't even need you to have the skill set, I just need you to do, and I'll come
Hmm.
through.
Yeah.
And I mean, even today, like, you've been telling me about this since pre-panny or the panorama, the pandemic.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
sorry.
Long before that. And I just
Right.
keep, yeah. And like how you said, you don't even have to have the skill set. That's one of my thing. I'm like who am I, right? To sit here and start this platform. Like I don't have the skill set to do this and that. Like it's just how do you keep those voices down?
I would say for me, I remind myself of that verse 31:8. It's not about that I can do it. It's the fact that God said that He not only blessed me, but that He already went ahead of me.
Mm.
Like what's for me is for me. I think that's one of the things that definitely keeps me like in my pocket, like in the words of the kids, in my bag.
Right. Yeah.
Like signed the millennial. It's one of those things that keep me like grounded and understanding. Like I got the whole me thinking I need to have this right and I need to have this right, the whole spirit of perfectionism, and
Hmm.
and it's okay because we are both in type A type careers.
Right. Yeah.
So it's I can't act like I'm just gonna waltz on in. What? I've already reviewed everything. I did a research to the research just to
Yes.
make
Yeah.
sure that
That's
I know
me.
what I'm getting into. Right.
Yeah.
And it's both of us. I'm like, it's type A. This is what we do. Um,
Yeah.
and then I circled back just to make sure and checked if there was more sightings or more things that I could find in order to make sure that it's done correctly. And God's like, I didn't even need you to do all of that. I just need you to be present. I need you to be open, and I need you to do the thing I said you to do. And all that other stuff, we'll figure it out. But I just need you to be available. So that's my whole thing with imposter syndrome, reminding myself of that verse, reminding that what's for me is for me. But at the same token, like, I don't have to have all the pieces figured out. It does
Mm.
not have to be perfect. I just need to enact. And that's the whole thing that we were talking about,
Yeah.
circling back about the spirit for this year, or the word for this year to be execution. I, and this is a conversation I have with myself. I was like, but I was like, girl, we're just here. When you get in trouble with your mom, we're just here. I don't want to hear nothing else. If you're not posting it, I don't want to hear it. If you're not doing what you said you was going to do, I don't want to hear us pontificating, doing all the things that we're great at. Just do it.
Right. Yeah, we just have to show up. I think for me, one of the biggest things the way I shut down that noise, for me, I feel like I've been through a lot and I have such a great testimony that I feel like others have to hear it, because I'm like, when I was going through those things, I've been through a lot in the mental health. So I'm like, when I was going through depression, if I can just turn on a podcast and listen to myself, would it help me? And the answer has always been yes. So that's what keeps pushing me when I hear all this loud noise. That's what keeps kind of like pushing me. Like, I have to do it. I have to show up. I'm not going to have everything perfect and the right setup, but if I start, I'm going to get far. So that's how I kind of like
I love
shut
that.
down all that noise. And I constantly have to remind myself over and over.
I love that. I just, to piggyback off of what you said, the thing is, how many people am I helping by being obedient to what God already told me to do?
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
How
Mic
many
drop.
people, right? Like, I'm done. Like, how many
Done.
people, and by people, it doesn't even mean like, yes, it's other people, but it's like within my family. Like, how is it by me being obedient, I'm able to release the things for other people in my family, you know?
Yeah.
And one thing I want to ask is, when are you going to tell your story? Because it is a beautiful story. I know this is not what we're doing today, but I'm just letting you know your story is.
I will soon. I have someone that I'm recording, I think in 2 weeks, and we're going to
Okay.
talk about mental health. And
Okay.
then that's when we're going to dive in, because she has been on the other side of what I went through.
Okay.
Um, I don't want to give too much, but
Nope.
just a little of like my background. I've suffered from depression and I've been a cutter since age 15. And she was on the other side. She was married to someone who was a cutter and who was an addict.
Oh,
So we're going to have this beautiful conversation, and we're both going to be on different sides. So that's going to be awesome. That's where I'll share some of my story. And as the podcast evolves, I'm sure my story will be said more and more as the podcast grows.
I just, you're just beautiful. That's it. So inside and out. And it's just a testament to just how life ebbs and flows, but when you really get out of whatever you're in, it's even more beautiful. And I'm excited to hear that podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what else can we find about Nachelle? So you're in New York now,
Yes. I'm in New
and
York
you're
City.
working in a specific hospital, or
I'm glad you asked that question. I travel. I'm a travel doctor, so I work as a locums,
I
which
didn't
means I
even know
travel.
that was a thing until you
Oh,
told me the other day. So do they just tell you where to go, or how does it work?
so typically you sign up like at a particular hospital and then you get credentialed, and that can take some time unless they do like emergency credentialing. But for the most part, it takes about like six to 10 weeks for you to get started some places. And so with that being said, I work in upstate New York, so I work in different hospitals. Some of them are low resource setting hospitals, which, to be honest, I prefer because I trained in a community hospital. So I
Okay.
prefer being able to manage things that I know, I've seen before, compared to when you work at bigger academic hospitals. You don't really manage those anymore, right? Because it's like, oh, call the surgery team, call the neurosurgery team. I'm not doing surgery, by the way, but it's like, call the neurologist or call this, call all these other subspecialists. And in the community hospitals, you already know this information, so you can temporize things. And so that's what I do. I work as a travel doctor, similar to the travel nurses. So that's mainly what I do. So here's the thing: as much as I've prayed for God to allow me to be in the career of medicine, I genuinely don't like focusing on it as part of my identity. It's something that I do,
Hmm.
but I don't want for people to be like, because like there's nothing that kills a vibe more than if you're going out to hang out and someone's like, oh, by the way, she's a doctor. Then they start asking you questions. I
Yeah.
didn't. This is
Yeah.
not it. This I This is not it. Boundary. You know what I
Yeah, that
mean?
happens
Like,
to us all the time. It was
no,
just,
so I got a
oh,
question.
yeah, yeah. I have a tax question. So, and it's like, no, no, like we're eating
Right.
dinner or we're at a family gathering. First of all, when I clock out, I don't even want to hear the word tax. I'm like done and over. And you know, Johnny and I, we do the same
Yes.
exact line of work. So it can get very like the work can never end because we'll
Right.
be talking about it after hours, or he'll ask me a question and I'll have a question for him. So there's never like this off button. We have to like try our best to turn it off
Right.
and be like, okay, that's it, no more. So when we go out with friends and they have these questions, it's like, no. So I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I just please don't, or else I'm going to charge a copay, and I
Yeah.
think you should charge a fee. You know how you've seen where if I had an iPad, you know how they're like when you start talking and they have a tip button.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I want a tip button because here we are trying to enjoy life
Yes.
and yeah. So that's one of the things that I'm very like adamant about is like, okay, by the grace of God, if you want me to tell your story, if you want me to encourage you, no problem, because I genuinely believe that women of color, you, me, are needed in all sorts of careers. And we tend to be a small subset group of it. But that's one of the things that I can't stomach. Um, so I am on Instagram and TikTok. I am under Nash MD, Nache, and then MD on both TikTok and what was the other one? Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah.
Right.
And you're so good, girl. You have to teach me some tips because I be
Girl,
seeing your posts. I'm like, look at Nachelle.
and those are those days when I post, and thank you by the way. Those days when I post, I am fighting. Do you understand? I am fighting like this conversation right here. And guys, I just throw the post down. Throw the
Yeah.
post and see what happens. Just mind your business and throw the post. Um, or put the, post the post. So that's where I'm located as far as those two things go. And then wait a minute. So for you, do you have anything that you are found at? I'm just curious.
Yes, so I
Because we have a
have
lot of
an
things.
Instagram. I have an Instagram page, and I'll
Okay.
tag it in the show notes. So it's just Hey Cynthia Martinez, and that's where I'll be focusing on my podcast and all things motherhood, wife, all the
Yes.
fun things will be there.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
so I'll post all the things on the show notes.
I had to do that because I know you wouldn't easily give that. I won't.
Yeah,
I want them to look for you because you're awesome and you
yeah.
deserve. You deserve.
Yeah. So I
Um,
have one last question. So I always like to end it with spill the tea. And when we think about spill the tea, we always get your matcha because I know that's what you
all
were
day.
drinking. I know when we think about spill the tea, we think about like gossip, but here we're going to turn it into something positive. So I'm going to ask you one question and you're going to spill the tea all about that one question.
Okay.
All right. So, what is one memory? What is one embarrassing memory that you have overall? It can be
Okay. Okay.
personal, career.
Okay. I'm thankful to God that He answered our prayers and that we have our careers, but it's definitely going to be a personal one because this is where we reside. Um, okay. So, back then, okay. So back then, when you started trying like different hair weaves and stuff like that, right? So for
Yeah.
me, my thing was like, I want to wear wigs because that's what was hot back in the day. So I went to this church function and it was like calisthenics, like we had to like, like bean bag races and stuff like that. And then the beanbag, I tripped and rolled over, and I had my nice wig on. But when I rolled over, the wig didn't roll with me. The wig stayed just like this, like, oh Lord. So I was, and then like you had all these like dookie
Oh
braids and like, cause I didn't whatever. So then I was so embarrassed. I ran to the bathroom, put it on, and ever since then I do not fraternize with wigs.
no.
I'm
Oh
definitely
my
afraid of it.
God. But I
I'm
feel like you would play it off well. I feel like you would just get back up, put it back on, and
no
just make
ma'am.
a joke and roll with it. Versus
No.
me, I would just hide in a corner and cry.
Well, listen, the only thing that rolled was me. The wig did not. And ever since then, I was like, you know what? This is not our ministry. And I know everyone's like, what lace, whatever, whatever. I can't. I don't trust it. That was the
Oh
one
my
thing as a
god.
child, or well, not as a child, I was like a teenager, but I was like, you will not find me.
Oh
Don't trust me.
man.
That was
I
embarrassing
have
for
an
me.
embarrassing moment, but it's career wise. And I
Okay.
would never forget this moment because it was harsh. My first job was Ernst and Young, as you guys will learn. I'm a tax accountant. That was my first job ever. And what you learn in school versus what you're supposed to know at the job, let's make it clear. It's completely different. Like, we're
100%.
not learning in school what's supposed to be in the career, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So I'm a tax associate for the tax department, and we were working on this big engagement. There was a few line items that I had no idea where to put it from the trial balance into the partnership return. So I go to my senior, as I should, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm not really sure where these line items belong." And he looked at me in my face and he was like, "Didn't you just graduate? Like, you should know this." In front of the entire team. Like, it wasn't a 101, it was in front of the entire team. I'm 100% sure I turned bright red. I don't even recall what I said next because it was just like a blur of embarrassment.
I'm so
I
embarrassed. Secondhand embarrassment over here. You
Yeah.
see me like, oh,
And I'm pretty sure I just grabbed, because I back then, the trial balance, we would print it. I'm pretty sure I just grabbed my little trial balance and just walked away. I'm pretty sure I cried in the bathroom or in my little cube, but I would never forget that moment because I was like, oh my, I cannot believe he embarrassed me in front of everyone. One thing is to do it 101,
100%.
which still doesn't justify, like, he should have never said that. But in front of my entire team, I was brand new. Yes, I just graduated, but they don't teach you these things in college. And out of that, I do have to say I'm thankful for that moment, because from then on I was like, when I become a senior, when I become a
Hmm.
manager and so on, I will never humiliate someone like he just did to me. And that's always been my thing in my tax career. I
Yep.
will never humiliate anybody. If they don't know and something, I'll just sit down and explain it to them. There is no stupid question for me. And that's
Agreed.
something that I try to make sure and voice it to my team or whoever's working under me. So it was embarrassing, but it instilled that in me to never do it to someone else because of the way I felt. I remember I turned so red, like, when you turn bright red that you just feel the heat.
Yeah.
That was me at the moment.
That's so cold blooded, though. That's just, why would you do that to someone? To make yourself feel better?
Right, yeah. And then in front of everyone, I was just like, that
You
I
didn't have
would
to do me
never.
like that.
Yeah,
So I'm no longer wearing wigs, and you're no longer going to embarrass people. That's what I got, and I love that.
that's our. And we will end it like that.
Exactly. Oh my goodness.
Nachelle, thank you so much for joining. I
For
you
having
you
me.
have to come back. You have to come to Connecticut. Like, you're a few
That is
stops away.
overdue. That is
Yes, it
overdue.
is
I need to get on the Metro
overdue.
North yesterday. Yesterday.
Yes, you do.
So
We have to have dinner. We have to link up.
for sure.
Yes.
For sure.
Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so
I'm
much for having me.
so honored that you're the first.
I'm honored that you would even have me here, girl, because
Of
we all know
course.
we are here by God's grace. Hello.
Yeah.
Insanity.
Yeah. Any last words of wisdom?
Yes. I always say this, bet on yourself, and not to say that it's a solo thing, but bet on yourself because God already knows that you're capable.
Mm,
So
that's
just do
so
it.
good.
Yeah. That's it.
So good. Thank you
Thank you.
so much, Nichelle.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.